guys, it's Ashley, and I hope everybody had a very happy holiday. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about the 2019 Book Awards. I did this sort of format last year, and that is why I'm deciding to do it again. Basically, for me, I personally don't read enough books or read enough new books for me to be able to create a best books of 2019, because that would be like a fourth of my list of books that I've read. It gives the best of the best in each category a chance to be seen in a video, and I think it's the easiest and most efficient way for me to do it, so that's why I'm here. I got this format from G at the channel Book Roast, and I will leave her channel and her video linked down below in case you guys want to see. She is awesome, and she made a really great video that I decided to steal, but I'm not stealing because I'm giving her credit. So be sure to check her out in the description down below, because she is all of the inspiration and all of the credit of this goes to her. I know I've already talked for a little bit without getting into the video, but I want to just preface this with two really quick things. First of which, I am not going to be making a best book of the decades video, and this is why. So I started my channel in 2016, and personally, I did not start actually reading a lot of different books and diversifying my reading tastes until I started BookTube. So for me to be making a best books of the decade video would really just be me picking my favorite books of the last 4 years, and I don't think that that's right. So I'm gonna leave that to people who have read a lot more than me and who feel comfortable and confident doing that. I am just not that person, and I've realized that in trying to make that video, and it did not work. And the second thing I want to preface this video with is that these books that I'm going to be talking about have not necessarily all come out in 2019. They are books that I have just read in 2019. And I had a really tough time making this list because a lot of the books that I read this year were rereads, surprisingly. And I usually don't reread that many books, but this year, I don't know, I was just in some kind of like mood, I guess, and I was going through my Goodreads and I'm like, what the fuck? What? I can't even pick from this list. So it was really hard to come up with the books to correspond with these correct categories, but I managed to do it, so just bear with me through the video, okay? Awesome. So that's all that I wanted to say. Without further ado, let's get into it. So the first category on this list is the best emotional read of 2019, and for this one it was pretty easy. I just went through my list and figured out the book that made me cry the most, and that was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is a extremely hyped book, and if you have not heard of it, I highly suggest you pick it up and find what it's about and read it, because it is amazing and beautiful, and I loved it so much. I've tried to get my mom and my sister to read it. That's how much I love it, because I know that they don't normally read these kinds of books, and I need them to read it. Basically, this book follows Evelyn Hugo, who was a movie star in the 50s, I believe, is when it takes place. She has a reputation in Hollywood for having had 7 husbands, and nobody really knows the backstory as to why or how or what happened. So we are in present day following this journalist who is getting a story on Evelyn Hugo, and she thinks she is going to be interviewing her for the donation that Evelyn Hugo is giving of a bunch of ball gowns to this foundation or charity or something, but in reality she's actually invited to Evelyn Hugo's home to get the inside scoop on all of her life, write her biography so that when she dies she will have some kind of a legacy to live on by. This girl is kind of like shocked, to say the least, but the entire story is basically you getting to know who Evelyn Hugo was and going through her life, through each stage of her life with her 7 different husbands. I really liked the way that we jumped between the present day and the past story that we're being told. It was a really good way to mix and see how Evelyn's decisions and things that happened in her past have created the person that she is today that we're listening to the story from. Plus the ending had a really good twist that I knew was coming from the beginning because I had seen spoilers for it, but it was so much better than anticipated. It was so much better than I could have ever thought. The ending literally made me cry, and that's why it's on this list as the best emotional read. So the next category on this list is the most unique read of 2019, and I feel like this could go one of two ways. This could be unique in like the format that it was told in, or it could be unique in like the kind of story that's being told. I tend to think of it as format because I haven't really read any like strangely told stories this year. So for this, I'm actually picking a pretty recent read. That is The Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Black. I talked about this in my most anticipated releases of 2020 video, and I'm kind of confused, kind of not, because I do have an arc, like I said. It does say on sale February 2020, but people are telling me that this book has already been out, and I Googled it, and a sequel is supposed to come out in 2020. So what is happening? My instinct is telling me, and from what I've gathered through not doing research, but just assuming, which is not the best way to do that, but I'm gonna do it here, is that it came out in another country, so maybe like London, Ireland, the UK, that kind of thing, and then is now coming out this year in the US. I don't know. Don't quote me on it. It was just a good book, okay? Read it when you find it. Anyway, I'm picking this book as the most unique book I've read in 2019 because it's told through journal entries, interview transcripts, crime documents, and then also like a normal exposition narrative sort of thing. So it's told in multiple different formats and things that really feel like you're really one with the story. You're like discovering all of this as Pip, our main character, is. I guess I should talk a little bit about what this is about if you haven't watched my last video, because this is going to be kind of confusing if you don't know. This book is about this 5-year-old murder case that has been closed. This girl named Andy Bell was killed and nobody has ever been able to find her body. And her boyfriend was one of the prime suspects, and all of the sort of evidence pointed toward him, but they could not fully convict him because he actually committed suicide before they were able to get a hold of him and hold him for questioning and things. So the case was closed because her body was never found, and they assume it was the boyfriend. They have enough evidence pointing toward it that it was him, but nobody was ever able to like definitively prove and rule out all of the other suspects. So this case was just closed because they just didn't feel like looking into it anymore, is basically what it was. So 5 years later, we follow our main character named Pip, who for a school assignment is deciding to try to solve this mystery. Try to solve this mystery because she is convinced that the boyfriend did not do it, that he is innocent. It was just such a good, great book. It's clearly a thriller, as you can tell, and I really enjoyed it because it reminded me of like an ABC 2020 or a Dateline or Nightline or whatever it's called, where there's already a story that has happened and you're just diving back into it and discovering new things and learning more about it. I really enjoyed that sort of aspect of it. For the most uniqueness of this book, since we're talking about its unique features, were the journal entries. I really enjoyed them. There were parts where she had created like murder boards that you could see. There were transcripts of interviews that she had completed with other people, and it was just a really cool way to like tie everything together. You were learning about all of these things and seeing all of these pieces fit together as Pip was, and I really enjoyed it. So the next category is the most fangirl worthy read, and for this I have to give it to Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which is the second Taylor Jenkins Reid book that's on this list within 3 questions. I can't help it, they were just really good. So Daisy Jones and the Six was another extremely hyped book this year. This one actually came out this year, whereas Evelyn Hugo came out last year, but this book deserves all of the praise that it gets and more. It is so good. I decided to put this one in this category because these characters to me just stood out so much in this story. It was crazy. It's like so much of the dialogue, so many of the like quotes that could really be not exploited, but just like you could just like get them stuck in your head. The songs that are not actual songs, but are soon hopefully going to be songs with the TV show that's coming out. It's just hard not to fangirl over this story. Despite the fact that it does deal with some really heavy issues, it's so hard not to fangirl because the story is about a band. And what do you do when you like a band? You fangirl over it. And it's so hard to not do that. So this is why it's in this category. If you somehow don't know what this is about, we follow a 60s and 70s rock band called The Six, and we follow Daisy Jones, who wants to make it big. At one point during the story, they collide, they become one of the biggest rock bands of all time, and the story is about how they fell at the top of their career. It's just, I can't say anything other than it's really good, because that's all I got. I can't put it into words. The next category on this list that I am here to talk about is the funniest read of 2019. And for this one, it was again sort of a tie between, do I give this book to a different category? Do I keep this book here? And that book is Aurora Rising by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. So if you've read Illuminae, which you should have if you're watching my channel because I have recommended it to you enough, you know that they can write really funny characters. They can write funny dialogue, they can write funny just scenes. In a time of panic, they can be funny, and it's really great. This book really exemplified that because you got a team of 6 people who really don't want to be together at all, and they have to try to figure out a way to come together. So each of these people has a very different backstory, a very different way to live, I guess. It's hard to explain, but just having them all come together, just the bickering, the sarcasm, it was so funny. Not to mention, can I just read you the tagline real quick? This should just go to show how this book won funniest read of 2019. They're not the heroes we wanted. They're just the ones we could find. Meet the squad of your dreams. All in all, it was a really, really funny sci-fi book. I've recommended it a ton of times on my channel before. J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman, when they come together and write, it is just so, so good, and I'm really looking forward to the next book, and definitely recommend you should read it if you like a funny sci-fi book, because this is that. So the next category we have on this list is the best cover of 2019, and this one, it was not very difficult for me to decide, because honestly, whereas this book would probably not have made the list in any other category, I'm glad that I can put it here because I really love this cover, and that is surprisingly, Tunnel of Bones by Victoria Schwab. The covers for these books, the two middle grade books that she's written, are really, really beautiful. They're not over the top, but they show you exactly what this book is about. They give you the exact vibe that you need to feel going into this sort of spooky, scary, you know, ghost story book. And this one especially is really cool because it takes place in Paris, and a lot of the story and what happens in it takes place in the catacombs. And it's like, if you just look at the cover, that's clearly the catacombs. That's Paris. There's just so much that you can learn about this story through just this. It's just a good cover. Okay, it's just a freaking good cover. That's what I'm trying to say here. Anyway, moving on. Next up, we have Best Contemporary of 2019, and I surprisingly did not read that many contemporaries this year. I think I read about 5, and 3 of those were rereads. So I really had to choose between 2 because I really don't want to pick a reread for this sort of category, I guess. Just because I want each of these videos that I make every year to kind of summarize all of the good new books that I read in 2019, whereas rereads could potentially have popped up on older videos. So anyway, choosing between those 2 books of contemporaries that I read this past year, I had to go with Geekerella by Ashley Poston as the top of this category. I read this book in about 1 day during the Booktubeathon, and while I don't remember every single detail, I do remember how absolutely adorable this book was. This girl follows Elle, who is a blogger and obsessed with this TV show, this sort of sci-fi Star Trek-like TV show, and she finds out it is being rebooted, and the main character is actually being played by this actor, this teenage actor who she absolutely hates. So she goes on her blog, she creates this nasty blog post, and what's done is done. This actor Darian actually somehow manages to get a hold of her, but not knowing that it's her, starts a conversation with her. They start talking, they start kind of feeling things, not knowing who they are to each other, not knowing that she's talking to Darian, not knowing that he's talking to the one girl who hates him. And there's this whole like cosplay con thing, ExcelsiCon thing that's happening, and it's a wild ride. It's a wild ride about fangirling and also a really cute romance story, and it's just so fun. It's so fun. It was so easy to read. So I just highly recommend. It's also a Cinderella retelling. It's just so cute. It's so fun. She also works at a food truck called the Magic Pumpkin. It's just, I can't. Okay, I'm done. Please read it. So for the next category of Best Fantasy, I had a couple of different contenders for this. And really it was between this book that I'm about to show you now and the book that I chose for the best overall of this year. So for this, I am choosing The Red Scrolls of Magic by Cassandra Clare and Wesley Chu. So if you don't know, this book is an adult book. It's the first in a series all about Magnus Bane and Alec Lightwood from the Mortal Instruments. And this book does not come in chronological order with where she is in publishing the books that are currently coming out. This book actually follows either sometime in the Mortal Instruments, like in between the books, or after the Mortal Instruments, but before the Dark Artifices. I can't remember exactly the timeline of it, but it's one of those where it doesn't come in the chronological way that you think it is, because it's being published now. It's not having anything to do with the books that are being published now. It has something to do with the timeline of the Mortal Instruments. Despite the fact that I absolutely love Magnus and Alec, I just didn't really want to pick this up immediately, but I did. I forced myself to because I knew I was going to enjoy it, and oh my god, I enjoyed it so much. This book was funny, this book was adorable, this book had all of the quirks and fun things in the world of the Mortal Instruments. It also had all of the dark, depressing, secretive things of the Mortal Instruments, and just Magnus and Alec together were, oh my god, so amazing. I really cannot wait for the second book because I just want to see more of them together. They're so cute. They're so great. I love them so much. And that's all I'm gonna say, because if you don't like Magnus and Alec, you can go roll over in your grave. you bitch, because they're great. So the second to last category that I have here is the best sci-fi of 2019. And I did not read a ton of sci-fis this year. One of the sci-fis that I did read, I already put on this list, which was Aurora Rising. So for this category, I actually am picking a book that I am not even done with currently, which kind of defeats the purpose, because if I haven't finished it, how do I know that it's the best sci-fi of 2019? I'm 75% of the way done with it. So I'm nearly done, I'm nearly finished, but I spent nearly all day yesterday, and yesterday was Christmas, mind you. I spent nearly all day yesterday after my family had gone home reading this book, because it was so freaking good, and I'm addicted to it, and I need to know what's gonna happen, but I have other priorities, so I have to put it on hold for a little bit. Anyway, this story is Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. I have never read a Brandon Sanderson book. I tried to read Mistborn, but something was messed up with the book pages in the book copy that I have, so I didn't end up doing anything with it. But this is the first Brandon Sanderson book that I've ever picked up, and it's so freaking good. So I knew going into this book that this was about a girl who wanted to be a pilot, and we are living on this planet in the middle of space, and she wants to be a pilot, and that's all I knew. There's so much more to this than just that. I have so many notes on this book already, and I'm definitely gonna be making a book talk for this book because it's so good, and as soon as I finish it, I don't know if I'll dive into the second one right away. It just depends on how this book ends, but I know despite the fact that I haven't finished this book yet, it's gonna be so good. It's gonna be the top sci-fi book of 2019. It's funny, it's got all of the sci-fi elements that make you like reread the passages just so you understand what's happening. The characters are great, the story is great, there are so many secrets that are being uncovered throughout the entire thing. So many things that like you read and you're like, that's not gonna stay that way. There's a twist to this. There's so a twist to it. And even though you expect it and you know it's gonna happen, and it does happen, when it does, you still are like so shocked by it. It's so good. I can't explain. Anyway, I'm really glad that I started this book. I don't know what made me want to start this book, but I did, and it's really good so far. So it's definitely going on this list, despite the fact I haven't finished it, and I think that should say something. And finally, the best overall book of 2019. I don't know what that accent was, but we're going to go with it. Was Supernova by Marissa Meyer. This year I've talked about Renegades and Archenemies and Supernova so much your ears are probably bleeding hearing me talk about it now, but it had to be the best overall of 2019 because it was such a good end to the series. I flew through this book so quickly and was so anxious to see it done that I didn't take any notes for it. And hopefully I will reread this at some point and end up making a book talk for it. But for now, these scattered thoughts will have to do. This story as an end to the trilogy was so good. It had so many twists and turns. There was a moment where I thought everything was going to break loose and everything was going to be realized and all the secrets were going to be undone, and they sort of were, but they sort of weren't. We were caught in this in-between that had me suspenseful and on the edge of my seat the entire book until everything actually was completely revealed. Marissa Meyer just managed to string along this stupid secret throughout all of the books and wait until the very, 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 very end of this book to tell you that any of that had been, you know, unleashed and revealed to everybody else. And while that sounds like it would just make you angry because you want to know that this is going to happen so bad and it just doesn't and doesn't and doesn't until it finally does, it was so good. It was so good. These characters, Nova and Adrian, I just, like, despite the fact that Nova would make the worst decisions of all time, I just rooted for her so much because I loved her. And Adrian was just a sweet boy. I loved him so much. Anyway, this book won Best Overall for 2019 because of the way that the series ended. I freaking loved it. The fast pace that this book had and just the way that the series as a whole kind of finished off everything was so good. There was also a point at the end that they didn't really touch on and Marissa Meyer kind of left unraveled a little bit, which really excites me because I want to see something else with this character that was spoken about at the end of this book. I want to see something else with her. I want to see it so bad, and if it doesn't happen, I'm gonna be so angry. But I'm really excited, no matter what. So yeah, this book, if you haven't read the series yet, I've been telling you all year, just hop on it. It's so good. The books are really big, they're thick, but they go so fast. I just highly recommend. And so those were the 2019 book awards of this year. My overall stats for this year was that I have read 41 or 42 books. I believe it's going to be 42 once I finish Skyward. I don't know how many pages I've read, but my goal for the year was 40. So I'm really glad that I was able to like boost myself over the edge like right by the end of the year. And I'm really, really hoping that this coming year in 2020, I will be able to hit 50 books for the first time in my life, because the past few years, ever since I started YouTube, while I have climbed up in the number of books that I've read, I have yet to pass 40 books. So here's to making that happen this year. If you have a best overall book of 2019 that you've read this year, please let me know down below so I can get some new books that I should be reading for next year, get some new opinions on some things that I might already have on my shelf, because I'm very eager to get this year started off with a bang and read as much as I can. I'm really excited for what 2020 is going to bring, not only in my life, but in my reading world, and I hope that you guys are gonna have a fantastic new year. So I think that is going to be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching this year and every year before this, and for everything that you do in the coming year. And I will catch you later. Goodbye!